Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Cucchiara, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Cucchiara.
Welcome in, Joe Cucchiara with Real Estate Radio Live. As you're listening to this, either on Facebook or listening to it later on the podcast, I hope everyone is doing well. It's hard to believe that we are in this pandemic for, 6+ months. And we still want to try to bring information to you, certainly on real estate. But we've got an interesting series going lately with Jack Russo, who is back in California. And those that are missing out on the viewing pleasure, you got to see his outfit today. It's classic. I mean, it's classic.
Getting ready for Halloween, man.
So the question is, will you make a court appearance that way?
Well, I'll tell you, there are some cases where I really think you do have to get dressed up for the case. And I have been experimenting with all these different hair pieces that my wigs, really full-on wigs that my mother has had, because she's giving them away as she now approaches 90 and no longer needs to go out. Why do I need to go out? I could just stay in the house. I watch TV. I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, our topic today is kind of an ongoing topic that we've been addressing here for the last couple of months on and off. Is it doesn't directly but indirectly affects real estate, business, employees moving in and out of California, and that's California in a crisis. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Really an overview and a summary of it's, and I'm sure a lot of people would make the case, say, listen, Joe, it's not just California. Many of the states are going through similar problems with unemployment issues, new tax laws, things like that. But I would argue, and obviously we'll let Jack come in and get his point of view, I would argue that California is going through a unique time right now because of not only the tax implications, but the question is this well-known Silicon Valley and the history of Silicon Valley and the mysterious, everybody wants to come here and work and you can't, I don't know, before this pandemic, Jack, I think the fact was 65-70% of all funding came from Silicon Valley. I think that's I'm not sure if that's national or worldwide. So how is this all going to change? And then how does it relate to real estate? A lot of people are moving out. A lot of people are second guessing. And I've said all along, and I'd like to think that I've learned a little bit in my old age, is you wonder how much of this is overreaction and how much that we'll just go back to normal and forget all this a year or so from now. What do you think?
Well, I've had direct experience because I've been in Florida, and I've been in Florida so long now because of my mom that technically I'm more of a resident there. And I actually registered to vote there because I am actually going to spend more of my tax year this year and next year there for sure, because my mom's situation is so critical. And as I said, the Italian way, I'll take my glasses off and maybe I'll take the get up off as well as I unfold the story, because I've got this hair on from my mom and it's obviously doesn't really fit my face. I did buy this in an Army Navy store, and I didn't bring with me, but I bought a full gas mask from an Army Navy store to get on the flight. And the people on the flight thought I was a wacko. And I said, man, it's the only thing you can do is to have a full gas mask. If you have a full gas mask, you protect yourself. And so I did get upgraded to first class. It was a pretty decent flight. Actually, it was fast. United must have caught a tailwind because I want to say we got cross country in like 5 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, that is pretty quick. Yeah.
That's fast because usually there's a headwind when you're going west for some reason, whereas if you're going east, there's a tailwind. I guess
that is correct.
Right?
I was in the airlines for years, and that is absolutely correct. Predominantly, it's a headwind that you're fighting coming from east to west. That's correct.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so this from your time at Delta. And I guess this wasn't the case yesterday. And I have to say, it was a very pleasant flight on United. The Wi-Fi worked so well that we actually did a Zoom call on Wi-Fi, not you and I, but me and another group.
Wow.
While I was sitting in a first class seat on United with Wi-Fi on. And ultimately the Zoom discussion got so, flamboyant that someone must have complained about it, because the bursar came over and said, hey, wait a minute, we don't really allow you to do a business call on Zoom in first class. Even in first class, we don't allow it. I said, you don't say that. You lose a lot of business if you say that to first class people, that they can't do a Zoom call. And I was in kind of my own little seat there, the window seat, and the woman next to me wasn't upset at all. But conceptually, they do have to, I guess, draw some limits as to what people do, even in first class. People do wacky stuff on airlines.
Yeah.
You probably can tell a story. But let's get to the topic at hand, which is, it's very easy to imagine 20% to maybe even as many as 50% of the wealthiest people in California moving out of California and making a primary residence in some non-tax state, whether it be Texas, the state of Washington. I'm licensed in both. The state of Florida, I have a pending application to become a member of the bar in Florida. Lawyers and other knowledge workers can do their work almost from anywhere. What are the problems? Time zone difference, geography difference when it really matters to get to a court hearing or something very quickly. If you don't have your plane, you've got a lot of potential stumbling. And really what you might call the cultural differences of being in Florida versus being in Silicon Valley. And that's where you get to, what's the culture of Silicon Valley? Is they're going to keep people here?
Right.
And by and large, that culture is changing, because you're right that there was a lot of venture capital feeding what was 75% of the U.S. market for startups. The global market is, much bigger and much harder to measure, because you've got a lot of firms that don't even report, whereas the national firms do report, and there is a national report that comes out every year. Well, all the venture capital has frozen during COVID. It's very hard to get funded as a startup right now from traditional venture capital. I think angel investments are still doing investments, but traditional venture capital is like, we have to keep dry powder for our current companies. We don't want our current companies that we already have 5 or 10 or 15 or 25 or maybe 50 million in to run out of capital when they're trying to figure out how to pivot or what to do with their businesses. So they're essentially saying, let's save that capital for the people we've already invested in. And they're just tabling a lot of new investments. They're just saying, come back in a month, come back in 2 months. Why do I know this? I'm seeing a lot of those investments at Florence Ventures, where they say, yeah, we've given up on Sand Hill Road. We've given up on downtown Palo Alto. We need to come to an early stage firm like Florence Ventures, not a traditional venture capital firm, much more of a startup incubator. Let us help you get out of the garage. And I'm seeing people that are not in the garage anymore say, we'll give you a great deal. We'll give you a great discount. We'll give you a wonderful set of terms, because they're not getting at the higher food chain level the protein that they need.
Right.
They're not getting the big, whale to cut them a slack. Those people are saying, hey, we're not swimming right now. We're not even in the ocean right now. We're in dry dock. And, there are a few exceptions you'll hear now and again, but by and large, I think if you talk to someone that's actively pitching, they're very frustrated by the lack of traction and, come back tomorrow, come back after you have a few customers, and so on. So I'm going to make 3 predictions about this. As we see more and more of these fires generate poor air quality, there will be people that just leave for health reasons, period, full stop.
Yeah.
They'll say, it's a nice place, but I can't be here with this air quality. I left Los Angeles after graduating law school at UCLA, and I had a lot of offers to work in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a vibrant place. I didn't think the air quality in Los Angeles was that good, so I came up here to Silicon Valley in the 1970s, interviewing with the view of, I don't think I can live with that air quality. Of course, as you know, I was a much more athletic guy. You've seen the picture of me, right? You know what that looks like.
Yeah, you had age on your side too.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought to myself, if I want to be a runner and a biker and someone who does, training for a triathlete, which was the big goal back then, I want to bring that picture up because you're probably tired of seeing it, where you see me as this young stud. I look like something like this, right?
Wow, look at that. Holy smokes.
Look at that big smile there. And I've got it under HQ because that's the health quotient.
Look at that. That's movie star material right there.
I do think so. I look at that sometimes and say, man, I could have been in the movies. In fact, the person that was sitting next to me in first class was a ringer for being Angelina Jolie, a young version of Angelina Jolie. I swear I should have taken her picture.
Really?
If you look at her, I said to her, you could be in Hollywood. And she said, yeah, I've always wanted to be an actress, but then I got diverted to becoming like a family counselor or some other, hardworking job where you have to listen to people who are, upset and so on. I said, you should be in the movies. And she was like, yeah, get me a gig. I'll do it. You could do it. But I'm thinking to myself, when you look at why people move, they don't come to Silicon Valley to be in movies. They go to Hollywood for that. They come to Silicon Valley to build teams, to build technology, to build new innovation. Well, the second point is if the health situation is not great here, certain people aren't going to come. Right. The second point is if the cost of living here keeps skyrocketing, which it seems to do. Now I want to drop the footnote of a big announcement by Gavin Newsom that there aren't going to be any gas cars sold in California after 2030 or something. Did you see that proclamation of the issue?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the auto industry exiting California and what that will do? I don't think Tesla can make enough cars.
Well, the craziest part about that, Jack, is and most people with any kind of common sense understands, or if you're educated, that there's a more serious problem about that. There's terrible transportation services in California. In other words, there's no alternative for removing cars. That's the problem. If you had this
No, he's saying you get electric cars or electric motorcycles or electric scooters or something. I mean, in Florida, Joe, a lot of old people get around on electric golf carts. And I mean, not just on the golf course. I mean, they go out of their house and they go to the grocery store, no license plate, no insurance. They simply go on these little paths, which are associated typically with a golf course, but they make a left turn. They go into the shopping center and they take a parking spot up as though they have a car. That could be a theoretical future in a theoretical way, but it's hard to imagine how much transformation would have to occur because in Florida, they plan these communities associated with golf courses. And then a lot of people don't have a car because they do everything from around their house in a little electric golf cart, which means no license fees, no insurance fees, no registration fees, no oil changes, no gas. It's just a plug-in electric. You can imagine that. You can imagine that even in Palo Alto, if you live in Palo Alto, but not if you're commuting.
Well, I can, but the problem is, and I'll rebut that, but in general, is the problem is every time California comes up with one of these wonderful dream plans, guess what happens? What's next? We're going to have to assess a tax in order to achieve this carbon goal or in order to achieve the fires or the homeless. And that's always been my problem with this is, unfortunately, we're not going to solve the problem today. I've always said for years, government agencies, county government agencies, if they were forced to run it like a business with some kind of budget where people had to meet metrics and results, that's a different story, but they don't. They just do it on the back of taxpayers, right?
Well, I'll tell you, the other thing you should think about is Jane Fonda did an interview recently. I want to say it was on either CNN or maybe it was on PBS NewsHour. And she said Gavin Newsom plays as though he's totally green, but he allowed a lot of oil companies to drill right off of, Santa Barbara and other places.
That's correct.
And man, did she lean into him saying he's a two-face. And, I don't know Gavin personally. I know people who know him. I knew his father when his father was on the Court of Appeal. Great judge, great appellate judge, great thinker. Lots of interesting stories associated with him that we don't have time for. But generally speaking, Gavin's much more of a politician
Right.
than a judge or than anything like sort of a lawyer. He's really just a politician, and he's playing every angle of it. So he wants the green people to know that these fires are going to somehow stop by not having cars anymore, because greenhouse gases will go down. But let me tell you something. Greenhouse gases are not localized to just the state of California. The entire globe has a collection of greenhouse gases, and you don't stop it by putting a little tiny finger in the dam that's exploding. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's a nice, thing to maybe get him associated with the Democratic ticket for 2024. Maybe Kamala Harris as president.
Now him and you know what's going to happen, right? It's going to be Gavin and AOC in 2024.
Well,
right?
I don't think AOC would think he's left enough. I thought it would be more like Kamala, and in term to Kamala with him as VP on some succession theory. But
Yeah.
I was making 3 points. So one is the health point, which is if the air quality is not good, you're hosed. The second is if you try to address the air quality by doing things like, hey, you can't have a car anymore, there are a lot of people that are like, hey, electric is not good enough. I don't want to have anxiety about the electricity not being charged enough. I don't want to be on a little golf cart. I don't agree with this. We don't have mass transportation, as you're saying. There's not enough mass transportation. So then what's point three? Point three is when you have bad health and you have bad policy, when the taxes start to go up to try to address the policy, as you've said, people who are making money and have portability, the ability to make the same money in another state that's tax-free, of which there are at least 6 and maybe soon 7 and 8, because these states are competing for talent.
Yeah.
And they're even creating economic opportunity zones with the view that the talent should come in and be tax-free for a while to get things going. Well, when you have that in places like Texas and state of Washington, and even recently someone said this is true even in Tennessee, and for example, Florida, it's been true for a long time, people are going to move.
Yeah.
They're going to be very careful about not being in California for more than 182 days. They're going to divide their year up, and they're going to say, there's parts of California. I mean, look, there are times of the year in California that are very rainy, and I'm not a big believer in hanging out in the rain. I mean, that's the reason I left New York many years ago. I didn't like the rain and the snow and the slush and so on. So if you really can adjust your schedule to making it work, and you don't mind being on planes more often than, say, you might otherwise be, you can actually maybe get the optimum outcome. Well, there are people like Elon Musk that have decided that. He's got his own plane, of course, and he zigzags all over the world with it. But he's probably said to himself, this calculation's easy for me. Plus, the people in California, he views the California politicians as being against him. And when he wanted to run his factory during the COVID crisis, the sheriff came in, and apparently there was a big confrontation about how many people were on the assembly line without masks on, right?
Before we wrap things up, I know we got to go at one, but so I'd love to hear from your perspective. Obviously, you're a person who's invested in a lot of real estate over the last 30 or 40 years.
Yes.
You have real estate all over the world. If, as you sit here today, are you concerned? Are you looking at diversification in other states from your California real estate? What would you say to the person asking you that question right now?
Well, I would say there are unbelievable bargains right now in places like Mexico and Italy. Unbelievable, because they've both been hit by COVID. There are a lot more sellers than there are buyers. The exchange rates are great. The US dollar is still strong against the Mexican peso, so you've got the exchange rate difference. The dollar is relatively strong against the euro, not as good as the peso. But for people that are adventurous, you can definitely get some great deals. Now, the other thing that's true is in California, there are certain places where people just want to exit. And you could get some amazing properties, just some amazing properties that are worth millions for maybe 50, maybe even 30 cents on the dollar. You just have to know where to look. And it kind of depends on whether you really want to be, sort of entrenched in California. I mean, California's a beautiful place, and I always give it a lot of gratitude. I went to, law school here. I went to UC Berkeley for business school. They've got some of the greatest professors, some of the greatest schools, some of the greatest networks. The climate in terms of business, generally, with the people climate, the cultural climate,
right.
is great. People get it. They understand ideas. They move quickly. They make decisions fast. In Florida, it's this really old money, slow. I'm not sure. Why would this work? How would it work? Am I going to get my return? It's like more of a slow bond-like mentality. Hey, I'm getting older, kind of. Why would I take that adventure? I don't need that kind of adventure. I need like a regular check. That's a different mentality. And as a result, you see sort of a lot of deals can't happen in Florida or even in Texas, even in Austin. The climate is not really as go-go in terms of startups and we're going to change the world kind of thing. But we're starting to see some change. And as people leave California, those places will get an injection of new energy. And that new energy will cause things to happen, including in places as far away as Puerto Rico, where, as you know, we've done a bit of a seminar on this. Potentially is no federal tax and no state tax and only a 4% tax in Puerto Rico itself. So yeah, a lot is happening, and I get calls every day from people saying, I'm leaving. What do I need to do? How do I do it? What do I do to wrap up this business? Do I establish a new business in Florida? Do I establish a new business in Texas or Puerto Rico? And a lot of people are leaving. It's a surprising number, Joe.
I agree with you.
We're going to see a lot more.
Yeah. What do you think it takes for California? I'll call it a political wake-up call. Do you think that's imminent? Do you think that's ever going to happen? What does it take where people start thinking, oh my God, we're chasing people out, or maybe we need to make some changes? Or do you see that ever happening?
I think when Elon Musk finally announces, which he will, I'm sure, before the end of the year, that he's had it with the tax system and what he views as the repressive. This is all the plugs I have. I carry all these plugs with me when I go travel. You have to have power wherever you go. But the repressive nature of regulation, the repressive nature of, you can't do this. You got to label things this way. You got to have a sign that says pregnant woman may not want to come into this restaurant, even though, we have a special on Mother's Day for pregnant women having something to eat. It's like a joke. We say we do one thing, but then all the behavior the other way. But I think once we see, I'll say 10 significant people. Who's a significant person? Elon Musk. Who's another significant person in California? Pick any big time CEO. So the guy that runs Salesforce, if he were to Benioff were to say, I've had enough of this, I'm headed to Florida, I'm headed to Texas. I think my prediction is Elon Musk is heading probably to Austin. My prediction is people like Benioff will wake up one morning and maybe, get mugged in San Francisco or something, and they'll say, I've had it. I'm not saying that Mark Benioff is going to leave. He's very supportive of things that will fix poverty. He's very supportive of a lot of things, but conceptually, 10 people, and we can almost identify them from a pool of, say, of 100. If any 10 of that 100 leaders start to talk, whether on podcasts or otherwise, that I've had enough. I mean, even a guy like Joe Rogan, who some people say, hey, you're like the legal version of Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan doesn't have an MBA. Joe Rogan doesn't have a JD. Joe Rogan doesn't have 40 years of being a lawyer. But man, Joe Rogan's got a big profile, right?
He does.
He's so dope while he does these podcasts, and everything is beautiful. And Joe, no disrespect, but let's face it. There's a lot more knowledge out there. He does have an interviewing style that's kind of interesting. I personally think the podcasts are way too long.
Way too long, yeah.
He gets paid good advertising dollars. Someone said he just signed a deal for $50 million. Hard for me to believe, but go figure. Why am I not getting $50 million?
Yeah.
I'm jealous, Joe. I'm Jack, and we could be like the Jack and Joe show. Okay,
I like that.
Joe and Jack. And Joe, you got to be on it too. So we got to say Jack, Joe, or Joe, Jack, Joe, or Joe, Jack, or something like that.
We got to do some work on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. But
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Get enough of those people who made it in California and who leave,
You know, the other one I'm thinking is Larry Ellison, right? He's another hustler, yeah.
I think Larry technically has left for Hawaii, and he just doesn't say it. I don't think he pays taxes in California anymore.
Yeah.
Hawaii's got a lower rate. Hawaii's got a lower rate of taxes. Hawaii's got other benefits too. He owns an island in Hawaii. I mean, come on, right. His biggest real estate holding probably is in Hawaii.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, enough what I'll call big people, billionaire with a B kind of people. Yeah. And you're going to see others, you know, say, well, if that guy's doing it, maybe I should do it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something, and this is from real-time experience, and we'll end with this point. Florida is making it easier and easier to get all these changes to occur so that you're not spending, 16 hours sitting in DMV. They actually have brought automation to the process. So they're trying to, and they see it. If you sat in DMV in Florida, as I did, you actually see how many people are coming in from other states.
Yeah.
And they're welcoming them in, and they're saying, great, make our state great again.
All right. All right. We'll end on that one. Jack, good seeing you. Welcome back to California, and we'll do this again next week.
Okay. I look forward to it, Joe. I am going to brainstorm with you on how we can fix it. We'll send a letter to Gavin. It probably will have to be like a Marshall Plan or something, but we'll do the best we can because we do want to help California because we want to come back and visit here.
I like California. I agree. All right. Take care.
See you later, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Joe Cucchiara with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you, Jack Russo, for tuning in today. We'll be back with you next week. Take care. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.